what we should do next. And I suggested we did a show about a stunt man, and I being the smallest, I was very skinny and small, and I'm still small, not so skinny, but anyway, I suggested I did a stunt man. And so Ken and I came up with this idea, and if you imagine the Marx Brothers, you know, the three of them doing a stunt show, it was a bit like that, because Ken's writing was very witty and, you know, kind of, the actual verbal side of it was very, and visual side was very, very funny. And I was the little one, and I did everything. I used to bang a nail up my nose, I used to set that to my head, I used to explode a bomb in my chest, I used to lie on a bed of nails and have a brick on my chest, and then a walnut on the brick, and we called that Harvey McWallbanger's patented nutcracker, and someone would come on with a big, you know, and smash the walnut. That was how you smash the walnut on my chest. And then I used to mentally combust cotton wool, which was stare at a piece of cotton wool set cross-eyed for about 15 minutes, and suddenly it burst into flame. We did this whole thing all the time. And another thing I used to do was throw up potatoes into the air and smash them into 1,000 pieces. So that was good fun, because what we used to do was, I'll tell you the secret of this, we used to have a bag of spuds, and I was challenged if I could smash a potato into 1,000 pieces. I said, I'll do that. And so we'd pour the spuds onto the stage, but hidden underneath was a spud already prepared. So it was prepared. And then I would get the spuds and throw them out to the audience, and then we'd get the audience to throw them up and flatten that one into 1,000 pieces, which is great fun, standing on the stage watching an audience go poof, poof, I'm missing it. Or, they were trying to do it, and then I would triumphantly pick up the sausage that was actually fixed, and I would throw it up into the air and go boom, and it smashed to 1,000 pieces. People were mightily impressed by this. I was harmless. All it was because the potatoes, kind of glutinous, when you cut them, they kind of still stick together. So we used to slice them up into little, tiny, but you could actually pick it up, you could throw it up, just by going, bang, like that, 1,000 pieces. So I did all of these stunts. I mean, we had a guillotine built, not one as a showbiz guillotine, but we had to build like a real guillotine, it looks real. And then I used to have to put my head in there, have my head chopped off. Various stunts. And that's how I became known as, and that's where I got the name from. We called the character Sylvester McCoy, the human bomb. That's where the human bomb came from, because we used to take the audience out, and I'd lie on my back, bare chested, and stick a banger in a box on my chest and explode it. The fun of it was taking the audience out. People, in those days, you see, it was very revolutionary what we were doing, because people would come to the theatre, and that's what they expected, to sit in the theatre and see the show. So halfway through it, we would take them all out, and we'd march them out, we'd dress up in our uniforms, and we'd get them to hold hands and take them across the street. We'd stop the traffic, some of them would dress up as policemen, we'd take them to a car park, and I would lie down, or blow some fire, if there was, and I'd set that to my head, and I'd explode a bomb in my chest, and then we'd go back and have some tea. But I mean, the setting light to my head was, it was this funnel, you see, we put this funnel over my head, and we had, flames, and then it'd stick, and flames would come out of the funnel. Another trick, as you know. I wouldn't be here yet, but really set light to my head. No. In the funnel, there was a kind of a flap, so you'd show the audience the funnel like that, and they'd see right down it, and they'd see there was nothing there, but there was a hidden flap with some cotton wool on it soaked in paraffin. And so when you put it on, the flap would go down like that, and so there was a cotton wool with paraffin that would go on flame. So all you see is this flaming funnel on top of my head. But one night we did it, and the guy who was supposed to be doing it got a bit drunk, and he forgot to put the flap down. So I actually did set light to my head. That was the last time he ever did that, I can tell you. But I used to have a little goatee beard, with hair, like a moustache and this little goatee beard, like an American cowboy, And but what happened was I ended up having the most amazing beard, which now are quite common. People, kind of have little, bits of hair on the face that they can really control. In those days, that was more difficult. And I discovered the way to do it was I ended up with a square or an oblong piece of hair like that, with naked flesh in the middle and that. And the reason for that was when I blew fire. I used to do that when I first started doing it. I set fire to the beard. And I actually developed that. I'm very proud of that little thing. Anyway. So that's how I became Sylvester McCoy, because when we went to London, we played the Royal Court, which is a very important theatre in those days, still is, and we were upstairs at the Royal Court, and Ken Campbell said, look, they're really good. He said, they're really good. If you could, we could pretend, that you and I was Sylvester McCoy, in the programme. And I said, oh, all right, because I'd only just been an actor for, about a year with Ken, and I called myself Kent Smith. But I thought, Kent Smith was too much of a matinee idol type of name. Square job, Kent Smith's my name, kind of anyone pretends type of actor. And I obviously was not developing into that kind of actor. I was developing into something sort of other mad kind of thing. So Sylvester McCoy seemed a really good name. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. So we called Sylvester McCoy, played by Sylvester McCoy. And then in the blurb about the Sylvester McCoy, we invented this thing. He left the Noonan Grammar School at the age of 15, went to India, and kind of learned from the gurus in India how to set fire to his head and do all these kind of stuff. How to bang a nail up his nose, how to stick a ferret down his trousers. I mean, the ferrets down the trousers, that started because Ken Campbell used to keep ferrets as a pet. That's what he used to pets for ferrets. And he, while he was in Stoke-on-Trent at the theatre, had heard about a barman in Stoke-on-Trent who had been, he had been vet 10 shillings in those days, 10 shillings, that he couldn't keep a ferret down his trousers, for a certain amount of time. And he heard about this story, and the barman tried it and lost his 10 shillings. I don't think he lost something else as well. But Ken had always had this in his mind. He thought, and as we were doing the stunts, we were going around England, talking to stuntmen, in England, trying to find out, talk to them about their stunts, their life, and what it was like, so that we could use that as research and to help build up our show. An evening with Sylvester McCoy and Bob, and Ken suddenly thought, I think that'd be a good idea if we invented our own stunt. We get sort of stumped back to the stumping world. Yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it? What he thought was, had ferrets, you see. Now ferrets are unruly animals which have got, the teeth when they go together, they don't go like that. They go like that. And then they just hang on to whatever it is they've got until they until they kill it, and that's what they decide to let go. So, but anyway, Ken had these ferrets, and he invented this whole routine, which was, he'd come on, give a lecture on the ferrets, show the audience the ferrets, and how they were, what they would do, and use a piece of chicken and hang a ferret from it. You could actually hang a chicken, the ferret could swing it around like that, and be quite happy, And then the idea was that I wore these baggy trousers, and we've got tie here with some rope, and then I have to drop my trousers and have young ladies come up to examine me to make sure there's no, I didn't have any, protection, any stiffening, or anything like that. So that the ferret, there's all that kind of, so you can imagine that, young lady, and I'd with my trousers down my leg, just kind of chasing young ladies down the place and all that, and kind of dragged back, and then that was part of the fun, and then the ferrets are running about, and then we take the ferrets, and on the Guinness Book of Records, which we made up, in the Guinness Book of Records. This is my world record for having the ferret down the trousers. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to try and break the record for having the ferrets down the trousers for you, the sensation ticket and all that stuff. And so that's what they do. And I'd stick it down, and I'd tie it, and then they would tie it, and the ferret would be happy, and then suddenly I'd have to undo my fly, and the ferret would pop out and have a look around. And I would never break my record. That was part of the thing, never to break the record. But because I wasn't one. And so, but the reason why we got that was, originally what we wanted to do was, we wanted to get the ferret and train it to run up the ferret handler who had a white jacket on, and he had a nose protection, in case the ferret bit his nose. He had a silver nose on there. And so the idea was the ferret would run up his arm into a bag, and then surreptitiously we get to pretend that the ferret had escaped into the audience. And then our ambition was to get all the ladies in the audience to sit with their legs in the air like this while we hunted for the ferret. That was the main reason for doing it. Wow, ferrets, we couldn't train the ferret to go up, And so in rehearsals one day I got still for a stage and said, oh, stick the damn thing down my trousers. And I discovered something really interesting. When a ferret went down your trousers, it went to sleep. Because it's a nice warm dark place, down in baggy. And they liked that, so it was the safest houses. But in fact, also I had a secret pocket which you put it in, so it couldn't, do any damage. I can prove it didn't do any damage because it was after that point I did actually end up having 2 sons, so it was only well. And my voice is still quite deep. Anyway. So that's that was it really, and I just kept the name, Sylvester McCoy. And we did that show for about 2 years. We travelled all over Britain, and then we went to Germany, and Norway and Sweden. I explored the ball inside the Arctic Circle, set that in my head inside the Arctic Circle. And it was a great time, touring around all over Europe, and it was quite a new, into the theatre were coming all these new ideas. Fringe theatre was being born, and there was revolutionary ideas. People were throwing off their clothes with abandon and doing, Romeo and Juliet without anything on, and all sorts of things like that. Any excuse to get their clothes off and call it art. and we did the same really. Yes, because once we did this sketch, and it was the idea was just because we worked in pubs and in working men's clubs as well. But we got to this thing of working in amongst people, and we had this one which was a kind of a wrestling match. In fact, we ended up, it's like two men in their underpants wrestling inside, but it was comedy wrestling, and I was very good at being thrown around. And there was Marcel Steiner, who ended up owning the smallest state in the world. He, which was a state on the sidecar of a motorbike, they took it everywhere. He did epic plays inside there for two people. And anyway, he and I were doing this wrestling match, and he used to be able to pick, I could fall over. I mean, I was very good at all that. And so he'd bang me up and down on my head. If you imagine I was upside down, and he would be banging up and down like that. That's part of the routine. And one day he was banging me up and down, and suddenly the audience, which was mainly ladies that night in a pub in East London somewhere, started roaring with laughter. And I was banging my head upside down, my head was getting banged on the ground, and suddenly I got this some feeling of sense of freedom. and I looked up. I was upside down at the time, and I saw this little willy waving up and down. Oh my God! And it was an accident. I mean, Marcel, who was very tall, had no idea this was happening. I was slipping out of my underpants, and he didn't. And it was then we discovered, that nudity was funny. I mean, because this was, the 70s. Things had been very restricted up to then. But we discovered that you could get a laugh out of this. Never got dawned on anyone that you could actually get a laugh out of it. And so we kind of kept it in a way for a while, because it was, we pretended, oh my goodness, that's supposed to happen. But it wasn't the first time. We just recreated that very first time. But Marcel, his timing, he was always a bit kind of brutal in his timing. Sometimes he just started to rip them off, and I didn't like that. I didn't think that was subtle. Because as we were doing, as I told you earlier, no, I like subtlety when I expose myself. Anyway, so earlier, I told you about the mailbag routine. Well, we brought the mailbag routine into an evening with Sylvester McCoy and Bob, and I did the mailbag as well. And again, someone, in these underpants being chained up, and you get young ladies up to the chains and all that. And then I'd be put in the mailbag, and then I'd be padlocked in there, and I'd try and break my world record, which I wouldn't do, and then they'd forget about me, and I'd still be bouncing about the stage in the mailbag. And then I'd suddenly erupt out of it eventually, having escaped from, the handcuffs, the chains, and all, everything else, and the mailbag. And there I would be, triumphant with, But it never quite had the big finish that we wanted. And that suddenly dawned on me, I know, because I wanted to be in charge when I exposed myself. I know what I'll do. It's when I'm inside the mailbag, not only in the terrible struggle to get out of everything, I would come out triumphant from the mailbag with the handcuffs, with the chains, with the padlocks, and with my underpants in my hand. And that's what I did. I used to come out with this kind of, it was just a quick thing, and it was an accident, and everybody believed it was an accident, because it was. I mean, that was the idea. And so we did that all over the world. And in fact, I went to Dublin and did it there. Dublin was a very Catholic country then, still is a bit, but much, much more restricted. And they'd never seen the like of their life. No, they didn't. They were shocked. In fact, there were questions asked in the House of Parliament about it, and we were told that maybe we should plan our escape from Ireland before they got it. Because I actually came out by mistake on them every night, twice on Saturdays by mistake from the mailbag, triumphantly holding the chains and my underpants in my hand. And they didn't like that at all. So they left very quickly from Ireland. But it made front page news. Sylvester McCoy breaks the penis barrier in Dublin. I was quite proud of, really. That was the way back then. I'm now much more, yeah, we'll do that now. Anyway, that's my story of how I became the human bone, or now, thing I haven't told you about.
Everything you've got in the sentences.
All right, do I miss it? Everything I'm sending compared to now. I don't know. I mean, we had a wonderful time because it was a revolutionary time as far as theatre was concerned. We were inventing, we collectively, not just the roadshow, but other groups that we met on the road in Berlin or in, Ochternacht in Echelfecken, but wherever it is we travelled. It was good. We were young and we were breaking new ground. We were incredibly arrogant as well. We thought we were the best things that ever was. And we were like pop stars, like pop bands, not stars. We became stars in Germany. In Germany they called us the Beatles of the theatre. We couldn't believe we could do these things because Hitler had wiped out the variety theatre. Any Gargoylian theatre that they had in Germany had been wiped out. Anyone who was dwarf, they were killed. Anyone, it was anyone. And so no one did any of that kind of Gargoylian theatre that we were into. So the Germans just couldn't make this out. They loved it. They fell about laughing at it. They kept saying, "Why do you do this? What is the political significance of banging this nail up your nose?" He said, just doing it for a laugh. Well, that's you're doing it for that. And but they also they said to us, look, German actors couldn't do what you do. They couldn't make themselves look ugly. They wanted to be heroic and take over the world. Anyway, no, but that was great. We were doing that kind of stuff, and so. It was great at that time. I don't think I'd like to do it now. I'm too old. Because I'm still enjoying what I do. I still enjoy my work. I'm still enjoying my work because, I still got the same excitement about it. Because I still travel all over the world, which I love doing, and try very different things. But for my age at that time, it was brilliant. I was very lucky.
Yeah, got two radio stories that comes to time. What's in your radio 4, I heard, but then there was some problems. Is your radio still radio 3, all right?
No, Doctor Who, the pilot, yes, of Doctor Who. You came for a nice comfortable sleep, didn't you? Yes, we made the pilot, and can I say I've heard it, the first half hour of the story. I have no idea what the story is about, because we keep it a big secret. But the sound effects are stunning, quite stunning. It's like listening to Star Wars on Radio 4, Doctor Who meets Star Wars sound effects on the radio. It's an absolutely stunning radio effect. When orchestra's playing, music's astonishing, the kind of soundscape that they put on it is wonderful all the way through. But the Radio 4 commissioner doesn't like science fiction, so they've decided not to commission it. What happened was that the guy who ran Radio 4 left to take over running the British Museum library, the British Library, and so he went off to do that, and he gave Dan Freeman, the producer, £15,000, which is a hell of a lot of money to make a pilot, half-hour pilot, because they don't give you a lot. We didn't see any of that money in our pocket. I don't know whether, obviously the orchestra got more money because it was members of the music union. But anyway, all that was given to that money was given, and it was really well spent. But what happens politically in these things is a new person comes in and takes over, and they don't want to have anything to